Paul Frege again. As we continue our conversation into strategy, we're now going to tackle the ever important and often underestimated strategic resource allocation. This is where the rubber hits the road. You may have formulated the greatest strategy of all, but if you don't put resources behind it, it won't get done. And those resources are essentially people and money. Let's talk about this. The starting point would be the content of strategy. As a reminder, Paul's 4 Ps are position, priorities, payments, and performance. The position gives you a sense of where you are and where you want to go. What's important goes into the priorities, the key things to do. And then it has to be backed up with resources or payments. How much do we have to spend? How do we allocate our resources? And what budget process do we use? Then you would move into performance, track the results, and then feed back into positioning. So let's go a little deeper into it with an example of the first step of strategy, which is the SWOT. I'm going to give you the example of UNC Chapel Hill. I worked with the College of Arts and Sciences to create a strategy across the entire university for all the divisions within the College of Arts and Sciences. And we started with a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. These are the data that you would use to feed into your strategy, to feed into your priorities, to feed into your initiatives. And you can see these. I won't go into all the detail, but anyone who's in an academic institution may see some of these same things. Some strengths related to faculty and the experience and low tuition, a very unique university setting. Weaknesses: faculty and staff compensation below what they should be, communication and organizational inefficiencies, and then advising and career mentoring, which are critical to the success of the students. So this took a lot of work to get to the point and prioritize these as the top 3 in each of those categories. On the external side, we looked at opportunities and threats. We want to build those into the strategy as well. Opportunities, a more global and interdisciplinary curriculum, service as a focus of the public institution that UNC is, and then expanding high impact and relevant research. The threats that were coming toward this College of Arts and Sciences would be a funding hit, and then increasing demand for value and ROI from a liberal arts degree. Students had also increased their expectations. So these are the external pressures. Those are the things you put together to determine what your strategy would be. So this slide shows the UNC Chapel Hill College of Arts and Sciences strategy, a very succinct set of statements, strategy statements: mission, vision, values, priorities. Their mission: think, communicate, collaborate, create for meaningful lives. The vision: reimagining the arts and sciences for the public good. And then the unique set of values: student-focused, scholarly excellence, and strategically bold, willing to take chances and differentiate. The priorities that came out of this exercise were focused on curriculum, research, and the story. Those feed off of the SWOT that we saw earlier. Now, the resource allocation comes into the next step. How do you get those priorities done? What kind of initiatives need to take place? Who's going to be working on the initiatives? And that's an investment of people. So that's a resource allocation. What kind of money do they need to make those investments to get them done? Before we launch into those details, a few definitions or nomenclature for implementation planning. Priorities, objectives, and initiatives. Priorities are the things that we live our mission, what we need to do to live our mission and achieve our vision. What's most top of mind? It's usually a noun or a verb statement. Then you have objectives within the priorities. So each priority might have 3 objectives that they're a goal or a target they're hoping within that time frame to accomplish. Some people call those goals. And then the initiatives are summary statements of actions, usually with a verb, to make those objectives happen. And they might have a nested set of 3 initiatives as well. Could be more detailed, but you don't want to overmanage this. You want to definitely have ownership at the initiative level and report this out on a regular basis. So the next few slides show you exactly how that played out for the UNC College of Arts and Sciences. You can see here that for priority 1, about the modern, innovative, inclusive, and global curriculum, there are a few major objectives: reinvent general ed, reimagine humanities PhD, and expand and develop instructional methods based on evidence-based inquiry, and finally generating more interdisciplinary, experiential, and global learning opportunities. So those were the objectives over that time period, and then each one had a detailed set of initiatives to get that work done. That's priority 1. The next slide is also priority 2, expanding high impact and interdisciplinary research. So you can see strengthening the basic and applied research portfolio, harnessing interdisciplinary talent for addressing global issues. So there's a people growth piece here. There's a facilities objective, building adaptive research facilities to keep up with the times. And then increasing commercialization of research, again with the theme of making it high impact and also relevant. Third priority, and I generally recommend no more than 3 priorities, tell the story of the College of Arts and Sciences. Raise the national profile. Number 2, create awareness at the local and state level of what they're doing. Instill a culture of strategic planning and thinking that creates and tells the story of the college, and then raise $600 million as part of a campaign. So these are things about telling the story. It turned out that there was a lot of great things going on, but many people didn't know, and that's very important for reputational assessments of a place like UNC's College of Arts and Sciences. The last piece to successful implementation and ensuring that you're allocating resources and getting an ROI comes into the metrics of performance. And you could arrange these a number of different ways. For this particular organization, we arranged it by mission and vision, and then each of the priorities. You know that they would be aligned by initiatives as well. So you're shooting for some things like student satisfaction and a net promoter score, alumni satisfaction. That shows how well you're achieving your mission. You can have an external review of performance, an annual faculty and staff survey for vision, which is to reimagine for the public good. And then you'll have more detailed metrics for each of the priorities. This gives you guidance for how you would allocate your resources in terms of people and money. So each one of those initiatives we spoke to before might have a budget associated with it plus personnel associated with it. There's another great tool out there that a lot of organizations use to assist in this process of going from strategy to initiatives and strategy to budget, and that's the balanced scorecard. I'll present a few slides that present this concept at a high level. You would start with the vision and strategy, or mission, vision, values, strategy, all those pieces, and then they need to feed into what they've developed 4 key quadrants of activities. Now I recommend thinking about your quadrants of activities by your priorities, but this is a great starting point that might feed your thinking of priorities. For example, financial, internal business processes, learning and growth, and then the customer. All of those aspects need to be considered. It might vary, though, based on one particular year, that financial initiatives and priorities have to rise to the top over internal business processes. The theory here is there should be some activity in all of these, and then I would posit that you want to separate operating strategies from strategies, which are about moving the organization in a new direction. So you don't have to repeat everything you're doing in your organization. Talk about your change efforts. But continuing some description of the balanced scorecard process, you can see that it starts with translating the vision. That means communicating it, getting consensus, and over-communicating across the organization, both internally and externally. Getting feedback and learning from your folks within the organization, doing the business planning with them to create those initiatives I talked about before, and then communicating and linking back. So you have to measure. You'll get what you measure. A few more slides that describe some more details about the balanced scorecard, starting with the customer. The key questions to answer is, how do our customers see us? It's a translation of the general mission statement to service. And then you have to have some measurement. So here are a few ways you can measure it. New products, percent of sales from new products. Responsive service, on-time delivery. Again, net promoter score is a common tool used for measuring customers. But all strategy has to have a customer in mind. In higher ed, obviously the student would be the key customer to keep in mind. But you also have other customers as well. Then you'll look internal to the organization, internal perspective. What must we excel? So this is the strengths and weaknesses assessment. What do we have to be great at? What's our special sauce that takes us above and beyond other competitors? And these are a few examples. It could be technology-based, manufacturing. It could be service-based, could be knowledge-based. Every initiative has to have some consideration of financials and returns. So how do we look to shareholders or stakeholders in higher ed? The people who contribute, for example, the state government would be viewed as a stakeholder. Alumni would be viewed as a stakeholder. And so these are things that you would want to measure and report out on a regular basis. Where do you have to show your net change over time? The last piece is about innovation and learning. So what do we need to continue to do to add value? What kind of technology, product focus, time to market? How do we advance our people? These two slides came from Ruth Johnson. She's a big believer in the balanced scorecard and using what's called strategy maps to feed that process. So what you do is you start with the top line of the mission, vision, values, I call the strategy statements, and then you think about your overarching differentiation and what you're trying to accomplish. That's going to feed into that. Supporting all that effort, of course, is when you'll get the financial piece as well as the organizational piece, and then achieving operational excellence. So you can organize your initiatives this way, and that example on the left is the School of Nursing Seattle campus strategy map, or the University of Washington Chancellor's executive team. So you can use these for an executive team. You can do it for the highest level, enterprise level. You can use it for a unit level. You can use it for a team, and that's these are two examples of that. My last bit of conversation with you is about the different types of budgets in general and in higher ed. There are 4 general budget models, and the one is incremental, activity-based, value proposition, and zero-based. On the other side of this slide, you'll see for higher ed some budget processing recommendations. The incremental budget is when you'll take last year's budget and plus minus. My wife, who's a partner at EY, calls that Sally, same as last year, up or down. So incremental was the most common used in a lot of organizations, especially in higher ed. It's easier to do, but it really assumes that all past decisions have been made and they reflect the current environment. So that's usually in a time of stability and lack of change. Activity-based budgeting is when you think about top-down. If we're trying to shoot for something, what is it going to take to make that happen? What activities need to happen for that to happen? So it's a little bit more top-down, but then you map it with the budgets and the activities to get the work done. The value proposition goes a little bit deeper in terms of pushing you to have justification for investment areas. And then finally, zero-based budgeting is when you're really starting from scratch every year and you're saying you need to may need to prove every amount of money that you need. This is when you're in a really time of shock or turmoil, like higher ed is right now with COVID-19, when you really have to cut your budget significantly. You have to wipe out all past assumptions about what's necessary and build it up step by step. A few more details on academic budgets to the right, a courtesy of our friends at NACUBO. Overall process is incremental, as I mentioned before, formula-based, which is often what a system might do. For performance-based budgeting, a system might say based on the number of students that graduate, you'll receive a certain amount of money. Zero-based, as I've described before, and responsibility centers. That's when you have units within an organization that essentially have their own P&L. So they're left to look at their own funding and then their own expenses, thinking, of course, of interactions with the central as almost a tax center because they'll have to pay for some services thereof. You could also do special purpose budgeting. This was an overview of resource allocations. The key message is to make sure you put your money where your mouth is. This is what you want to do. If you say something's important and you're going to be doing some new activities in it, you have to make sure you back it up with resources. Thank you.